They scoffed at her sensible shoes and knitted shawl, but when the pilot screamed, "Mayday, Mayday," it was Agnes from C-22 who knew exactly what to do. What secret was this sweet old lady hiding? Flying international class but dressed like she just stepped off a bus. "Are you on the wrong flight?" The mocking laughter targeted Anna Miller in seat 13 with a few passengers hymning in. She only pulled her faded hoodie tighter and stayed silent. But when Omar Kafahim, the Arab billionaire, collapsed in the aisle as panicked cries rang out, "Is there a doctor on board?" the entire cabin froze, and it was that very plain girl they had sneered at who knelt down her every precise medical move, saving him from a stroke at 3,500 Fort. Anna's hands didn't shake as she worked her face calm, her glasses slipping slightly down her nose. The cabin lights buzzed above, casting sharp shadows, and the air felt heavy with shock. She didn't look up at the faces staring at her, didn't acknowledge the whispers that had cut her just minutes before. Her focus was on Omar, his labored breathing, the way his hand twitched against the armrest. She adjusted his head gently, her voice steady as she called for help. The moment felt like it stretched forever, but it was only seconds before the chaos erupted again. Voices clashing, accusations flying. Anna didn't flinch, she just kept going. Her movements sure like she'd done this 100 times before because she had. And nobody in that cabin had a clue who she really was. Hey, if this story is hitting you, can you do me a favor? Grab your phone, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to the channel. It means the world to keep sharing stories like Anna's, stories that remind us who we are when the world tries to tell us different. Alright, let's keep going. Anna boarded that flight late, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair loosely tied back, strands falling into her face. The gate agent had given her a long look like she didn't belong on an international flight to Dubai. Her ticket said 13th economy way in the back, the flight attendant at the door, a tall woman with a tight smile and a name tag reading Claire, checked Anna's boarding pass and frowned. 13th back of the cabin, not business, go that way. Her tone wasn't rude, just sharp, like she was annoyed Anna hadn't figured it out herself. Anna nodded, her sneakers squeaking on the floor as she moved down the aisle. A woman in a sleek designer coat, her hair perfectly blown out, leaned over to her friend in the next seat. "Looks like she just ran here from the bus," she whispered loud enough for Anna to hear. The friend snickered, glancing at Anna's faded hoodie and old jeans. Anna's fingers tightened on her backpack strap, but she kept walking, her face blank. In 13th, a guy in a wrinkled polo shirt, maybe in his 40s, muttered under his breath, "Great stuck." Sitting next to this, Anna slid into her seat, set her bag under the chair, and pulled out a worn paperback. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at anyone. As Anna passed through business class, Omar Elohim glanced up from his tablet. He was in for a. His suit crisp, his watch glinting under the cabin lights. His bodyguard, a broad man with a shaved head and a permanent scowl, sat across the aisle. Comar's assistant, a nervous-looking woman in her 30s with a clipboard, was in Forb, typing furiously on her phone. Comar's eyes landed on Anna for a moment, and she met his gaze, her brows furrowing slightly. It wasn't a stare, just a quick pause, like she'd seen something off. Omar narrowed his eyes, leaning toward his bodyguard. "What's she staring at? Who is she?" His voice carried that edge of someone used to being the most important person in the room. The bodyguard chuckled, his voice low, probably once a glimpse of a billionaire in real life. Omar waved a hand, dismissing it, and went back to his tablet. Anna kept walking, her sneakers silent now, her face unreadable. She didn't care about Comar's wealth or his name. Something else had caught her eye, but she wasn't about to explain herself. A woman in a tailored blazer, her nails painted a glossy red, stood near the galley sipping a proof light champagne. She caught sight of Anna settling into 13th and nudged the man next to her, a slick-haired guy in a silk tie. "Look at that one," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Bet she's never even seen a plane like this before." The man smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "Probably thinks the in-flight meal is gourmet dining." Their laughter was sharp, cutting through the hum of the cabin. Anna's hand paused on her book, her thumb brushing the worn cover. She adjusted her glasses, her movement slow, deliberate. The woman in the blazer leaned forward, her voice louder now. "Sweetie, you sure you didn't sneak on? This isn't the budget airline." Anna's eyes flipped up, meeting the woman's gaze for a split second. "I'm sure," she said, her voice soft but steady before looking back at her book. The woman's smile faltered, but she turned away, muttering to her companion about people who don't know their place in economy. The cabin buzzed with pre-flight chatter. A group of young guys, maybe college students on a gap year, sprawled across a row near Anna. One of them, with a loud laugh and a backwards cap, turned to his friend. "Check out 13th, she probably does some blue-collar job." His voice wasn't quiet and heads turned. Anna's fingers paused on her book, but she didn't look up. The guy next to her, the one in the polo, leaned over, smirking. "So what do you do? Wait tables?" His tone was half joking, half mean, like he was testing her. Anna's eyes flagged to him, calm but steady. "I work in healthcare," she said softly, her voice even. The group of guys burst out laughing, one of them slapping his knee. Just a lowly nurse yet flying on this route. Must be a discount ticket. The woman in the designer coat from earlier turned around, her smile fake sweet. Honey, maybe next time spring for a better outfit. You're giving economy a bad name. Anna's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She opened her book again, her fingers steady, and started reading. An older man in a tweed jacket, his glasses perched low on his nose, sat a few rows ahead. He'd been watching the exchange, his pen tapping against a notebook. He leaned toward the woman next to him, his voice low but audible. Some people don't belong in places like this. You know, she's probably here by mistake. The woman nodded, her lips pursed as if she had just smelled something unpleasant. Anna's hand stilled on her book, her fingers curling slightly. She reached into her backpack, pulling out a small water bottle and took a slow sip. The older man caught her movement and raised an eyebrow. Careful with that. He called out, his tone patronizing. Don't want to spill on the seats. They're not cheap. A few passengers chuckled, their eyes darting to Anna. She capped the bottle, her movements precise, and set it down without a word. Her silence wasn't weak. It was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. The flight took off, the plane climbing into the night sky. Anna kept her nose in her book, ignoring the occasional glances from her seatmate. The cabin settled into a hum of conversation, the clink of drinks, the rustle of magazines. Then maybe an hour and a loud thud came from business class. Heads turned. Omar Alheim was slumped in his seat, his hand clutching his chest, his face pale and slick with sweat. His assistant leapt up, her clipboard clattering to the floor. Mr. Al-Fahim, were you okay? Her voice was shrill. Panicked, Omar's mouth drooped, his body trembling like he was fighting to breathe. The flight attendant, Claire, sprinted down the aisle, her face white. She grabbed the intercom, her voice shaking. Is there a doctor on board? Please signal immediately. The cabin erupted, passengers craning their necks, some standing, others whispering. No one moved to help, no one raised a hand. The air felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for someone else to act. A mother in economy, her toddler asleep in her lap, clutched her child tighter as the chaos unfolded. She looked at Anna, who was already unbuckling her seatbelt, and shook her head slightly. Don't get involved, she whispered, her voice laced with fear. You'll just make it worse. Anna's eyes met hers for a moment. Steady, unyielding, she stood anyway, her backpack left behind, and moved toward business class. The mother's hand tightened on her child, her lips parting as if to say something else, but she stopped. Anna's steps were quick, her sneakers silent against the carpet. A man in a loud Hawaiian shirt, his phone already out to film, muttered to his wife. What's she going to do? Play hero? His wife giggled, but her laugh died as Anna reached Komar's row, her presence cutting through the noise like a blade. Anna unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, her backpack still under the seat. She moved fast, weaving through the aisle toward business class. Her glasses caught the light as she reached Komar's row. The bodyguard stepped in front of her, his bulk blocking the way. Stop, he doesn't need the likes of you. His voice was a growl, his eyes scanning her coatee, her messy hair. Anna didn't back down. She looked past him straight at Omar, whose head was lolling to the side. He's having a stroke, she said, her voice clear, firm. He needs immediate action. The assistant, her hand shaking, snapped. You're just a nurse, not qualified. Claire, the flight attendant, grabbed Anna's arm, pulling gently. Please sit down. We'll handle it. Anna shook her off, her eyes locked on Omar. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. Move now. The bodyguard hesitated, his jaw tight, but something in Anna's tone made him step aside. A young woman in a bright pink tracksuit, her earbuds dangling, leaned out of her seat to get a better look. Who does she think she is? She said loud enough for the rows around her to hear. Some nobody trying to act important. Her friend scrawling on her phone nodded without looking up. Bet she's just looking for attention. Anna knelt beside Omar, oblivious to their words, her hands moving with precision. The young woman's voice grew sharper, her nails tapping her armrest. If she messes this up, it's on her. Anna's fingers checked Omar's pulse, her face calm, her glasses slipping again. The woman in the tracksuit rolled her eyes, but her tapping stopped when Anna's hands didn't falter, her every move deliberate, practiced. The friend glanced up from her phone, her brows furrowing, but she said nothing. Anna knelt beside Omar, her hands moving with precision. She tilted his head to the right, checking his pupils, her fingers pressing against his wrist for a pulse. Keep his airway open, she instructed, her voice calm but commanding. The assistant froze, her mouth open. The bodyguard stared, his arms crossed, but his eyes wide. A passenger nearby whispered, she knows exactly what she's doing. Anna didn't hear it. She was focused, her hands steady as she adjusted Komar's position. Does anyone have aspirin? She called out, her voice sharp now. An elderly man in economy, his hands trembling, fumbled with a pill bottle and handed it over. Anna took it, checked the label, and broke a tablet in half. She placed it under Komar's tongue, her movements quick but careful. The cabin was silent now, every eye on her. Even the college guys in the back had stopped laughing, their phones lowered, their faces pale. A man in a tailored suit, his cufflinks glinting, stood up from business class. He was the kind of guy who looked like he owned half the city. Smug, entitled, his voice loud. She'll kill him. just a lowly nurse daring to touch a billionaire. His words dripped with disdain, and a few passengers nodded, murmuring. The head flight attendant, a weary man with a clipboard, leaned toward Claire and whispered, "If he dies, the airline's done for her." The bodyguard, his face red, shouted again, "Step away from Mr. Alfahim." Immediately Anna didn't look up. Her hands kept working, adjusting Omar's collar, checking his breathing. She spoke, her voice low but firm. "If I stop, he dies now." The words landed like a slap. The businessman shut his mouth. The bodyguard's hands dropped to his sides. Claire's eyes darted between Anna and Omar, her clipboard trembling in her grip. In the galley, 2 flight attendants huddled, their voices barely above a whisper. One, a younger man with a nervous tic, glanced at Anna. "She's going to ruin everything," he muttered, wiping his hands on his apron. "What if she's wrong? We'll all pay for it." The other, an older woman with tired eyes, shook her head. "She's not wrong. Look at her hands." Anna's fingers moved like they had been trained for this moment. No hesitation, no doubt. The younger attendant's face flushed, but he didn't respond. Anna called for a blanket to keep Omar warm, and the older attendant rushed to grab one. Her hands shaking, not from fear, but from awe. She draped it over Omar, her eyes lingering on Anna for a moment before she stepped back. The younger attendant turned away, his shoulders tense as if he couldn't bear to watch. Minutes passed, each one heavy, the cabin thick with tension. Anna stayed crouched by Omar, her glasses fogging slightly from the heat of her breath. Then a gasp. Omar's chest heaved, his breathing steadying, his face pale and gray moments before started to regain color. His lips weren't as blue. The assistant let out a sob covering her mouth. The bodyguard blinked, his scowl gone. Anna wiped her forehead with a cloth from her pocket. Her hands steady but slick with sweat, she turned to Claire. "Tell the captain to prepare for an emergency landing. Have an ambulance waiting." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Claire nodded, scrambling to the intercom. The cabin was quiet now, the only sound Omar's heavy, uneven breaths. Anna stood brushing her jeans and started back toward 13th. The businessman in the suit looked away. His face flushed. The college guy stared at their shoes. A teenage girl, her headphones around her neck, watched Anna return to her seat. She nudged her brother, who was playing a game on his tablet. "That was insane," she whispered, her eyes wide. "She just saved him." Her brother glanced up, his game paused and shrugged. "Yeah, but she's still nobody special. Probably just got trained for that." The girl frowned, her fingers twisting the cord of her headphones. Anna sat down, her book in her lap, and adjusted her glasses. The girl kept watching, her expression softening. She pulled out her phone, hesitated, then started typing something, a post maybe, or a message. Her brother rolled his eyes, but his game stayed paused, his thumb hovering over the screen as if he wasn't sure what to think anymore. Back in her seat, Anna sat down and opened her book again. The guy in 13th, the one who'd mocked her earlier, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes fixed on the seat in front of him. A woman across the aisle, her phone still in her hand, muttered to her husband, "She probably just got lucky." Her voice was low, but it carried. Another passenger, a guy in a tracksuit with a gold chain, leaned over. "If she were really skilled, she'd be a doctor, not some ordinary nurse." The assistant still standing by. Omar glanced back at Anna. Her lips pursed. "We'll verify everything at the hospital," she said loud enough for the cabin to hear. Anna didn't respond. She turned a page in her book, her face calm, her hands steady. A few passengers whispered, their voices sharp. No one will even remember her face anyway. Anna's fingers paused on the page just for a second before she kept reading. As the plane began its descent, a man in a baseball cap, his face weathered from years outdoors, leaned across the aisle toward Anna. "Hey," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "You did good back there." Anna looked up, her eyes meeting his, and gave a small nod. The man's wife, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, tugged at his sleeve. "Don't talk to her," she hissed. "She's probably just fishing for compliments." The man frowned, pulling his arm away, but didn't say anything more. Anna's lips twitched, not quite a smile, and she went back to her book. The man's hand rested on his knee, his fingers tapping as if he wanted to say something else, but couldn't find the words. The cabin lights dimmed for landing, and Anna's silhouette stood out against the window, quiet but unyielding. The plane landed, the lights of the runway flashing below. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm but urgent, announcing the emergency landing. Passengers shifted in their seats, some granting to see Omar, others glancing at Anna. She didn't look up. The ambulance was waiting on the tarmac, its red lights cutting through the dark. Medics rushed on board as soon as the plane stopped, their equipment clattering. Omar, still weak, was lifted onto a stretcher, his eyes half open. But before they wheeled him away, he raised a hand, his voice raspy but clear. "I'm alive because of the girl in 13. The words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. The cabin went still. Every head turned toward Anna, who was already standing, her backpack slung over her shoulder. Omar's eyes found hers, and he spoke again, louder this time. "You didn't just save me. You reminded me that true worth isn't measured in wealth." The assistant's face fell, her clipboard slipping in her hands. The bodyguard looked at the floor, The businessman in the suit sank into his seat, his cufflinks no longer glinting. A flight attendant, not Claire, but a younger one with a nervous smile, approached Anna as she stepped onto the tarmac. "Ma'am, can you stay a moment?" she asked, her voice shaky. "The airline, we need your name for the report." Anna paused, her hand adjusting the strap of her backpack. She glanced at the attendant's name tag, Layla, and gave a small nod. "Anna Miller," she said, her voice quiet but clear. Leia scribbled it down her pen, shaking slightly. A passenger nearby, the woman in the designer coat, overheard and rolled her eyes. "Anna Miller, sounds like a nobody," she muttered to her friend, who nodded. Anna's fingers brushed the edge of her hoodie, her eyes flicking toward the woman for a split second before she turned away. Leia watched her go, her pen still in hand as if she wanted to say something more, but didn't know how. Anna walked off the plane, her sneakers quiet on the tarmac. She didn't look back, didn't pause for the whispers or the stares. The medics wheeled Omar away and the passengers filed out, their voices hushed now. But the story didn't end there. It never does when the truth starts to spread. A few hours later in the hospital waiting room, Anna sat alone, her book open but unread. A nurse, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift, approached her. "You're Anna Miller, right?" she asked, her voice soft. Anna nodded, her glasses slipping again. The nurse smiled, glancing at a clipboard. "Mr. Halahim's team asked for you. They want to know your full name." Anna's lips parted, but she didn't speak right away. She adjusted her bag, her fingers brushing an old keychain, a gift from her father years ago when she had first left home. It was a tiny silver stethoscope worn from years of use. She stood, her voice quiet. "Just Anna's fine." In the hospital corridor, a janitor pushing a mop bucket paused near Anna. He'd overheard the nurse, seen the way Anna carried herself. "You're the one from the plane," he said, his voice low, respectful. Anna glanced at him, her eyes softening for a moment. She nodded just once. The janitor's hands tightened on the mop handle, his face breaking into a small smile. "My sister's a nurse. People like you, you're the real deal." Anna's fingers brushed her keychain again, her lips curving slightly. She didn't say anything, just gave him a small nod before turning toward the exit. Behind her, the janitor watched her go, his mop, still, his eyes bright with something like pride. The hospital lights buzzed overhead, but Anna's steps were steady, her silhouette sharp against the glass doors. The hospital was a blur of white walls and beeping machines. Anna didn't go to Komar's room. She didn't need to. She'd done her job. And she wasn't looking for praise. But as she walked toward the exit, a man in a suit, not the businessman from the plane, but someone new, someone with a quiet authority, stopped her. "Miss Miller," he said, his voice low. Anna paused, her hand on the door. "I'm with Alahi's legal team," he continued, holding out a card. "He'd like to thank you personally, and we'd like to know more about your credentials." Anna took the card, her eyes scanning it briefly before slipping it into her pocket. "I'm just a nurse," she said, her tone even. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, like he'd heard something in her voice he hadn't expected. He nodded, stepping back, and Anna pushed through the door into the night. Outside, the air was cool, the hospital's neon sign buzzing faintly. Anna stood for a moment, her breath visible in the night air. A car passed by, its headlights catching the edge of her hoodie. It was an old model like the one her mother used to drive when Anna was a kid, back when her family's wealth was just a quiet fact, not a badge she wore. Her mother had taught her to move through the world without flash, to let her actions speak. Anna's hand slipped into her pocket, her fingers finding the stethoscope keychain again. She held it for a moment, her thumb tracing its worn edges before letting it go. She started walking, her sneakers soft against the pavement, her backpack bouncing lightly. The stars were out, faint but steady, and Anna's eyes lifted to them for a moment before she kept moving. Back at the airport, the whispers had started to shift. The college guys, the ones who'd laughed at Anna's hoodie, were scrolling through their phones in the terminal. One of them, the guy with the backwards cap, froze, his thumb hovering over the screen. "Yo, check this out," he said, turning to his friend. It was a news alert. A grainy photo of Anna kneeling by Omar on the plane. The headline read, "Mystery nurse saves billionaire mid-flight." His friend snorted, but his laugh was hollow. "That's her, no way." The guy in the polo who'd been sitting next to Anna overheard them. He pulled out his own phone, his face pale as he read the article. Anna's name was there, along with a detail nobody on the plane had known. She wasn't just any nurse. She'd been an emergency trauma specialist, one of the best in her field, on leave after burning out, saving lives in a war zone. The guy's hand shook as he put his phone away. By the next morning, the story had spread. Komar's assistant, the one who had snapped at Anna, was in the hospital cafeteria when her phone buzzed. It was an email from her boss's legal team copied to her. Her name was mentioned, along with a note about inappropriate conduct toward a medical professional during a crisis. Her face burned as she read it, her coffee growing cold. She'd been let go effective immediately. The businessman in the suit, the one who shouted that Anna would kill Omar, was back in his office when his assistant knocked. "Sir, the Alahim deal's off," she said, her voice tight. "They cited concerns about your judgment." He stared at her, his cufflinks sitting on his desk, dull under the fluorescent lights. He didn't argue, he knew why. The college guy with the backwards cap, the one who'd mocked Anna's job, opened his social media to find his video of the incident. Had gone viral for all the wrong reasons. Comments flooded in, calling him out for his cruelty. His fraternity dropped him from their roster the next day. The woman in the designer coat who whispered about Anna's bus stop look was at a cocktail party that evening, her glass of wine trembling in her hand. A friend leaned in, her voice low. "Did you hear about the nurse on that flight? It's all over the news." The woman's smile froze, her fingers tightening on the stem of her glass. She'd posted a snarky comment about Anna online, not thinking it would go anywhere. Now her phone was buzzing with notifications, her name tagged in posts calling her out. Her sponsorship with a luxury brand was quietly pulled the next morning. No explanation needed. She stood by the bar, her coat draped over a chair, looking smaller than she had on the plane. Anna's name was on everyone's lips now, but the woman couldn't bring herself to say it. Anna didn't see any of this. She was already on another flight. This one quieter, her backpack at her feet. She wore the same hoodie, the same jeans. The seat next to her was empty, and she was glad for it. She opened her book, but her eyes drifted to the window, the clouds stretching out below. Years ago, she'd sat in a car with her father, a man who'd built a fortune but never let it define him. He had given her that stethoscope keychain, his hands rough from years of work. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone," he'd said, his voice low, steady. "Just do what's right." Anna's fingers brushed the keychain. Now, her lips curving slightly, she didn't need the world to know her name. She didn't need their apologies. She'd done what she was trained to do, what she'd always done. The plane landed and Anna stepped into another airport, another city. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she didn't check it. She didn't need to see the headlines, the messages, the sudden respect from people who'd looked right through her. She adjusted her backpack, her sneakers quiet on the polished floor. A woman at the gate, her hair gray, and her eyes kind, glanced at Anna and smiled. It wasn't pity, wasn't judgment, just a nod, like she saw something worth seeing. Anna nodded back, her glasses catching the light. She kept walking, her steps steady, her head high. The world could whisper all it wanted. She didn't need their words to know who she was. Sometimes the people who judge you don't see you coming. Sometimes the ones who laugh loudest are the ones who fall hardest. Anna didn't need to shout her worth. She didn't need to prove a thing. Her hands, her calm, her quiet strength, they spoke for her, and in the end that was enough. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.